I knew something was about to go down the moment I saw the bleach blonde bob bobbing over my 6-foot-tall backyard fence. That's how it always started with Valerie Henderson, the HOA vice president with a nose for drama, and a son who treated the neighborhood like his personal playground. I was out back locking the gate to my private pool when I heard her shrill voice pierce through the air like a leaf blower at sunrise. "Frederick, you are not allowed to lock the pool when it's part of community access." I didn't even turn around. "It's not community access, Valerie. It's on my property, it's my pool." She huffed so loud I could hear it over the creak of the gate latch. "You know very well that your house is part of the shared recreation zone." I finally spun around, towel in one hand, padlock in the other. That clause only applied to the previous owner. He opted into the HOA's recreation agreement. I opted out when I bought the house. "You were at the closing meeting, remember?" Her lips tightened like she'd sucked a lemon. "That pool has been used by this community for years. My son deserves to swim just like everyone else. Then take him to the community center on Oak Ridge. This one's off limits." She stormed off without another word. Next morning, I found her kid Jackson already in my backyard, shirt off, floaties on, and halfway down the pool steps. I was standing in the kitchen with my coffee when I saw him through the sliding glass door. My blood pressure shot up so fast I nearly dropped the mug. I jogged outside. "Hey, out of the pool, now," Jackson froze. "My mom said I could." "Well, your mom doesn't own this property." "Get out," he grumbled but climbed out. I handed him a towel and told him to go home. Then I locked the gate again and installed a chain for good measure. An hour later, sirens. I opened the door to find 2 officers standing there, hands resting casually on their belts. "Sir, we received a call from a minor claiming he was locked out of a pool he was supposed to have access to." I blinked. "You've got to be kidding me." One officer turned his head, clearly suppressing a laugh. "Mind if we take a look at the property line? Be my guest." I walked them around to the backyard, pointed out the clear fence line, the deed markers, and even showed them the survey I'd framed in my office. One of them nodded with appreciation. "Looks cut and dry to me," the other said. "No violation here. You're within your rights." Just as they were leaving, Valerie came storming up the driveway like she was about to fire someone. "Officers. That man is denying my son access to our neighborhood amenities." "Ma'am," the taller officer said, "we've confirmed this pool is on private property. Your son had no legal right to be in it." She blinked like a deer in headlights. But this has always been our pool." "Not anymore," I cut in. "Maybe you should have read the documents before throwing your clipboard around." Valerie turned beet red. "You'll be hearing from the HOA board." I leaned against the gate, looking forward to it. 3 days passed with nothing but the sound of cicadas and sprinklers. I figured the embarrassment of being corrected by police had finally cooled Valerie's heels. I even started to enjoy the quiet, until I noticed an envelope taped to my front door right under the peephole, written in looping cursive that reeked of artificial civility. "Notice of violation, unauthorized use of recreational facilities." The letterhead had the HOA's insignia on it, an oak tree circled by the phrase "preserving the charm of Pinebrook Meadows." I hadn't even opened it before I heard the unmistakable crunch of gravel under expensive heels. Valerie stood at the foot of my porch, arms crossed, oversized sunglasses hiding whatever expression she thought passed for intimidating. "You've been formally cited," she said flatly. "For what?" She nodded toward the paper. "You're operating a recreational facility without proper community access permits. That's a $2,500 fine." I laughed once, loud enough to make her flinch. "You're fining me for using my own pool." "You're fining the property," she corrected. "Not you. The property falls under our jurisdiction." "No, it doesn't. The parcel is exempt from your recreational clause. You're trying to retroactively impose authority." Her mouth twisted. "The board voted unanimously. We're updating the charter to incorporate all recreational spaces within Pinebrook Meadows. It's a safety liability if we don't. You can't change the rules and apply them backward. We'll see what the magistrate says." I didn't answer. I stepped back inside, locked the door, and called my friend Derek, the real estate attorney I'd bought the house through. When I told him what happened, he cut me off midway. "Stop talking." I'll be there in 20 minutes with the easement documents and the original exclusion clause. Don't engage with them again. Derek showed up with a manila folder thicker than a phone book. He slapped it on my kitchen island. I told you to steer clear of Pinebrook Meadows for a reason. This HOA's been pushing the envelope for years. They've tried to annex private lots before, but this is the first time they're targeting someone with legal backup. I flipped through the documents. So they've done this before, twice. One guy caved, the other moved, neither had the paperwork or the backbone to fight it. You've got both. That night, I installed 2 more security cameras, one facing the pool gate, another covering the entire backyard. I wired them to a motion alert system that pinged my phone whenever something moved past the fence line. At 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. I sat up, blurry-eyed, and tapped the feed. The backyard camera showed Jackson barefoot, in pajamas, creeping along the edge of my fence with a flashlight and a pair of wire cutters. I bolted upright, grabbed my keys, and headed outside. By the time I rounded the corner with a flashlight of my own, he was halfway through cutting the chain off the gate. Jackson, he froze. I was just dropped the cutters. Now, he obeyed, panic washing over his face. I'm calling your parents. No, please, I paused. Why are you even out here? They said if I could get the pool open, the board would stop getting fined. My mom said it's just a technicality. I stared at the kid. He was barely 12, shoulders hunched, eyes wide. He wasn't acting on his own. I walked him home myself. Valerie opened the door, robe cinched tight, mascara smudged under one eye. Your son just tried to break into my pool with wire cutters. She narrowed her eyes. He was probably just curious. He told me you sent him. Her jaw clenched, but she didn't deny it. I'm calling Child Protective Services in the morning, and if I find so much as a footprint in my yard again, I'll have the DA on speed dial. She reached for Jackson's wrist, but I stepped between them. Keep him inside. Next time, it's not a conversation, it's a felony. The next morning, I emailed the security footage to Derek. He forwarded it to the HOA's insurance carrier with a demand letter attached. By noon, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from before, Douglas Maris, the HOA's actual president. I recognized the name from a few community flyers, but I'd never seen him in person. He asked to meet in person, neutral ground. We settled on the public library conference room. When I arrived, he stood near the window, arms folded, eyes tired. I don't condone what Valerie did. I want that on record. Then why haven't you removed her from the board? He sighed. Because she's got 5 proxies from absentee homeowners. She controls the vote. I leaned back. So she's running the show, more or less. But this latest stunt with the kid, that's changed things. Our liability insurer has frozen our policy until we get this resolved. Good. Maybe it'll finally make your board think twice before harassing people. I want to formally rescind the violation notice, and we're dissolving the updated charter amendments. They were improperly ratified anyway. And Valerie, she's under investigation by CPS. That's not within the HOA's purview, but I'll be encouraging her to step down quietly. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I slid a folder across the table. What's this? He asked. Every letter, notice, and false claim filed against me since I moved in. I'm submitting it to the county board that oversees HOAs. They're opening a review on Pinebrook Meadows. His face paled. That won't just hurt her. That'll crater our funding. Then maybe you should have done something sooner. He didn't argue, just nodded once and walked out. 2 days later, Valerie's house went dark. No porch lights, no cars in the driveway. A neighbor told me she'd left town to visit her sister out in Temecula. The HOA quietly issued a newsletter announcing interim leadership appointments and requested volunteers for new elections. I didn't run, but I did host a barbecue the following Saturday and everyone came, even Douglas. He brought his wife and admitted, after 2 beers, that Valerie had been a thorn in his side for years, but no one wanted to challenge her because of how many votes she controlled. Turns out, I said, flipping a burger, all it takes is one stubborn neighbor, a lawyer, and a couple of well-placed cameras. He raised his drink. To stubborn neighbors. To boundaries, I corrected. We clinked cans. The barbecue had barely cooled when the real fallout began. By Monday, an unmarked sedan was idling in front of Valerie's house. Two men in plain clothes stepped out, badges clipped to their belts, and began knocking on neighbors' doors. They weren't loud, but they were thorough, working their way around Pinebrook Meadows with notepads and quiet questions. I didn't have to guess they were with Child Protective Services, and probably something more serious too. I stayed out of it until they knocked on my door just past noon. The older one, mid-50s, sharp eyes, no wasted words, introduced himself as Detective Rayner from the district attorney's office. The younger one was from CPS, jotting notes without looking up. "We're following up on a criminal complaint involving Miss Valerie Henderson." "May we come in?" I led them into the dining room where Derek and I had stacked every piece of documentation we hadn't already turned in. Rayner scanned the folders, then looked at me squarely. "Did you personally witness the child attempting to enter your property uninvited?" "Yes," I said. "He was holding wire cutters and trying to break the chain on my gate." "And you have footage?" I pulled up the feed on a secured drive and showed him the clip. Jackson, flashlight in mouth, struggling with the chain link. Rayner's jaw shifted slightly, approval or irritation, I couldn't tell. "That's enough," he said. "We've also received complaints from two other residents about intimidation tactics linked to Henderson's position on the HOA board. Did she ever threaten you with legal or financial consequences if you didn't comply with board directives?" I nodded. "She issued a fabricated fine after I locked my own gate." He glanced at the CPS agent who checked something off. "We're building a case," Rayner said. "We've uncovered indications that she may have used HOA funds to incentivize votes, gift cards, cash reimbursements, even waived dues for certain residents if they agreed to proxy in her favor." That stopped me cold. She was buying votes. She framed it as community loyalty incentives. But yes. "And if we prove that the funds came directly from HOA dues, it becomes misappropriation. That's a felony." He stood and motioned to the CPS agent. "We may need your testimony. We'll contact you formally if it comes to that." I watched them head down the walkway and immediately called Derek. "She's not coming back from this," he said. "If they've got financial misconduct, the state will dig deeper. It's not just her anymore, it's going to hit anyone who signed off on it." That evening, I heard new voices at the HOA clubhouse. A group of neighbors stood outside arguing. I recognized a few. Mr. Lanning, who owned the landscaping company, and the Nguyens, who ran the daycare 2 blocks over. They weren't angry at each other. They were furious at what they had just learned. "She told us the vote was unanimous," said Mrs. Nguyen. "Turns out she never filed the proxy forms with the county. She told me the budget shortfall was because of water damage," Lanning added. "Now I find out she waived dues for 7 homes. That's fraud. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The truth was finally surfacing without my pushing it." 2 days later, the HOA held an emergency meeting in the junior high auditorium down the road. It was the biggest turnout in the neighborhood's history. Folding chairs filled every aisle, and people stood along the walls. Even the new interim president, a retired school principal named Eleanor Cray, looked overwhelmed as she stepped up to the podium. "I'll be brief," she said. "An investigation is underway concerning questionable financial activities involving our former vice president. We are cooperating fully with the authorities. Until further notice, all board operations are suspended and a temporary oversight committee will be formed." Someone shouted from the back. "What about the dues we paid last quarter?" "We're requesting a full audit," Eleanor said. "Any misuse will be documented and addressed. Refunds are not off the table." The room erupted, some with relief, others with disbelief, but the tide had turned. People were no longer whispering in driveways or grumbling in private. They were demanding answers, and this time, no one was backing down. After the meeting, I found myself walking next to Eleanor in the parking lot. "You've got a mess on your hands," I said. She gave a tired smile. "I was on the board 15 years ago. Back then, the worst thing we dealt with was mailbox paint colors. Valerie turned this place into a bureaucracy no one recognized. She didn't do it alone." "No," she agreed, "but she made people afraid to challenge her. That's over now." The next morning, envelopes arrived at every doorstep, not fines, not threats. This time it was a survey. The Oversight Committee wanted input from residents about what the HOA should actually be responsible for. Maintenance, landscaping, security patrols. Every item was optional. Every resident had a voice. For the first time since I'd moved in, Pinebrook Meadows felt like a neighborhood again. But the calm didn't last. A week later, Derek called me. "You're going to want to sit down for this." "What now?" "They arrested her," he said. "She was trying to flee the state, caught her at a gas station outside Flagstaff. She really thought she'd get away. Worse. They found HOA financial records in a storage unit she'd rented under a different name. Receipts for cash withdrawals, fake maintenance invoices, even a signed check made out to one of the proxy voters." My mouth went dry. "That's not just HOA misconduct anymore," I said. "She's being charged with wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and endangering a minor. They're throwing the book at her." Somehow, it still didn't feel real. Not until the news stations camped out at the entrance to Pinebrook Meadows the next day. Cameras, microphones. Headlines like "HOA Queenpin faces felony charges" and "Suburbia's dark side," power, pools, and perjury. Neighbors stopped pretending they were shocked. The real conversations happened in backyards and cul-de-sacs. "She always parked in the fire lane like she owned it." "She told me my kid's swing set violated visual harmony." "She reported my dog for barking when we were out of town. We don't even own a dog." Everyone had a story. Everyone had stayed quiet. Not anymore. At the next oversight meeting, Alina announced a plan to dissolve the HOA entirely. It wasn't symbolic, she had legal backing, and over 70% of residents had signed a petition in favor. "There will still be optional services," she said, "but nothing mandatory, no dues, no enforcement. No kangaroo court." It passed unanimously. The gates stayed up, but the signs came down. No more Pinebrook Meadows HOA, just Pinebrook Meadows, established 1989. A quiet neighborhood. No board, no clipboard tyrants. I kept the cameras up. Not because I expected trouble, but because they were a reminder of when standing your ground actually mattered. When one kid's wire cutters opened the floodgates to a truth no one wanted to say out loud. As for Jackson, he started riding his bike past my house again. No pool attempts. No sideways glances, just a quiet kid who'd been used by someone who should have known better. One afternoon, I was cleaning the garage when he stopped at the end of my driveway. "Pool looks cool," he said. "It is." He looked down. "Sorry about all that stuff." "Not your fault," I said. "Just don't let anyone talk you into doing something you know is wrong." He nodded and rode off. That was the last conversation we had, but it was the only one that mattered. The news vans were long gone, but their impact still lingered like smoke after a brush fire. The neighborhood was quieter, not in the eerie sense, but in a way that felt like everyone was finally exhaling after years of tension. The kind of quiet you get after a courtroom adjourns and the gavel's echo still hangs in the air. I thought things had finally settled, until I got a call from a woman named Cynthia Rains. She introduced herself as a forensic accountant working for the county auditor's office. "I've been assigned to review Pinebrook Meadows HOA's financial history," she said. "We recovered several locked USB drives from a storage facility in Flagstaff. Your name came up." "How so?" "There are emails between Valerie Henderson and a man named Trent Blass. Does that name ring a bell?" It did. Trent was the contractor Valerie had insisted handled all HOA-approved renovations. He was always around, but no one ever saw him actually do any work, just invoices. "They were discussing inflated contracts and kickbacks," Cynthia continued. "Your property was mentioned as a point of leverage. Apparently, she planned to force a lien on it under fabricated code violations if you didn't comply with the recreational access clause." I didn't even realize I'd gripped the phone tighter. She tried to fake her way into owning part of this place. She was close. If she hadn't been stopped, chances are you would have received a lien filing within weeks. The paperwork was already drafted. I had questions, plenty of them, but Cynthia was already 2 steps ahead. "We've referred everything to the district attorney. They're expanding the charges. Anyone listed on those emails is under review for conspiracy and real estate fraud." I didn't say thank you. I just sat down and let it sink in. She wasn't just trying to bully me. She was trying to steal from me using paperwork and codes instead of locks and crowbars. And she'd done it before, to others who didn't know better or didn't fight back. By the following Tuesday, subpoenas had gone out. Doug Maris, the former HOA president, was one of the first to be called in. I saw him walking out of the county building, face pale, suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. Later that week, I was summoned to testify before the grand jury. The courtroom was colder than I expected. No drama, no outbursts, just a quiet, methodical unpacking of evidence. I gave my account, showed the footage, handed over the documents Derek and I had preserved. The jurors asked questions. One of them, a woman with a notepad filled edge to edge, looked particularly focused every time Valerie's name came up in connection with finances. By the end of the week, Valerie was indicted on 3 additional charges: attempted real estate fraud, falsification of public filings, and conspiracy to defraud through misuse of HOA authority. Her bail was revoked after the court learned she tried to transfer property to a shell company registered in Nevada. She was remanded without bond. Meanwhile, back in Pinebrook Meadows, the Oversight Committee had done something unheard of. They opened the books. Every resident got a comprehensive breakdown of the last 5 years' expenditures. The numbers were shocking: over $80,000 listed under landscaping consulting, all paid to a company that didn't exist in the state registry. Eleanor stood in front of the community one last time, under the big elm tree across from the old clubhouse. "We're pressing charges against all involved parties," she said, "and we're filing a civil suit on behalf of the residents. Anyone who wants to join the class action is welcome." Someone asked what would happen to the clubhouse and the remaining HOA funds. Eleanor didn't even hesitate. "We're turning the clubhouse into a shared space managed by volunteer residents. As for the funds, when the lawsuit ends, every penny recovered will be distributed back to homeowners." People clapped, not politely, not out of obligation, but because someone had finally said the thing they'd all been waiting to hear. The following month, I saw Jackson again. He was sitting alone under the basketball hoop near the community park, legs drawn up, sketchbook on his lap. I hadn't spoken to him since that strange dusk conversation months ago, but something about the way he sat hunched, invisible, made me walk over. He looked up, startled. "You drawing something?" He nodded, then turned the sketchbook so I could see. It was a pencil drawing of the pool. Not just my pool, he'd drawn the fence, the padlock, even the little ivy runner that grew along the base. But the water was different. He'd shaded it dark, like it wasn't water at all. "That's intense," I said. He shrugged. "It's just practice. You still into swimming?" "Not anymore." "Why not?" He paused, then erased a corner of the drawing before answering. "Mom always said I'd be nothing if I didn't follow her rules." But her rules never made sense. I didn't know what to say to that. There's no Hallmark line for a kid who watched his mother orchestrate a felony. "You ever want to learn how to actually swim?" I said. "You let me know. Real lessons, no tricks. No gate hopping." He didn't look up, but I caught the faintest nod before I walked away. The criminal trial took months. Valerie's defense team tried everything: mental health arguments, claims of overwork, even accusations that she was manipulated by her co-conspirators. But the evidence was overwhelming. Emails, bank transfers, testimonies from residents who'd been threatened with fabricated fines. Even Doug Maris turned state's witness in exchange for leniency. The final sentencing took place in late autumn. Valerie Henderson was found guilty on all charges. The judge, stern, efficient, and clearly tired of white-collar nonsense, sentenced her to 15 years in state prison, with eligibility for parole after 7. The courtroom was packed. Everyone from Pinebrook Meadows who could attend showed up. I sat near the back, next to an older couple I'd never spoken to before. When the sentence was read, the woman beside me whispered something I'll never forget. She tried to take our home back in 2017, said we owed dues from before we moved in. We almost sold the place out of fear. I didn't respond. I just nodded slowly. Outside, people gathered in the parking lot. No one celebrated. No one cheered. It wasn't that kind of victory. It was the kind that leaves you tired but clear-headed, like finishing a marathon you never signed up for. I got home that night and sat by the pool. Just sat. No music, no lights. Just the ripple of water and the buzz of a single moth banging into the porch light. The cameras were still up. I hadn't taken them down not because I expected trouble, but because they were more than surveillance now. They were the reason none of this had been buried. Eventually, I drained the pool for the winter, cleaned the filters, replaced the lock with a newer model one with a keypad only I knew, not because I was afraid of intruders anymore, but because some boundaries deserved to stay sacred. Pinebrook Meadows no longer had an HOA. What we had now was something better. Neighbors who talked, who helped each other paint fences, who actually read the city ordinances before making demands. And when someone asked about starting a new HOA, the answer was unanimous: never again. The gate stayed locked, the pool stayed mine. And the boy who once tried to sneak in became the kid who sometimes waved when he rode by on his bike. It wasn't peace in the storybook sense. It was better. It was earned.